Hey listeners, it's Kyle here coming to you with a bit of a time warp while Adam and I enjoy a break exploring the enchanting Gold Coast of Australia. We're not leaving you hanging though. We are rummaging through our vault to handpick some of our standout episodes that deserve an encore. Today we're circling back to an episode that holds a special place in our podcast history. It's the mysterious death of JonBenét Ramsey, a closer look into this tragic murder. Originally aired in April 2023, this episode marks our second venture into the world of unsolved mysteries and remains one of our most haunting stories we've ever told. Today's episode dives into the heart-wrenching case of JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen whose life was tragically cut short and whose death has not only shocked a nation, but has also spawned a mystery that has puzzled armchair detectives and professionals alike for decades. From the ransom note to the myriad of theories swirling around her family and other potential suspects, we peel back the layers of this complex case, seeking clarity in a sea of confusion. We really hope you enjoy this one as much as we did making it. And the thing is, like, when will people realize that Tom Tucker was correct and that the number one cause of paedophilia is essentially sexy children? And welcome to the Compendium, an assembly of ways that money and privilege can help you get away with murder. Allegedly.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what we do now?
Well, that's this week's tagline.
Oh, okay.
Because, of course, assembly of fascinating, intriguing things I wasn't really too happy with, so I thought I'd try something a little bit different this week. More in line with what the name of the podcast, or the episode.
Oh, was that a tease?
So do you have any idea what today's podcast is about?
No idea. You've kept it a complete surprise.
Okay, well, we'll soon find out. But before we get there, I'm Kyle Reesey. I'm your host for this episode.
And I'm Adam Cox. I'm your co-host.
Welcome. How have you been this week?
Good. It's been busy. I've been in London all week. So it's been a busy few days.
Well, was that with work, was it?
It was, yeah, at an exhibition. So tiring. But I'm here and I'm ready. I'm ready to learn about some new things.
Oh, good. Well, before we get into it, just a couple things that have happened this week, just a couple things in the news that I've noticed. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but have you heard about that outbreak of armpit lice that has been plaguing the Brigham Young University?
Lice? What kind of lice, sorry?
Oh, you heard me correctly. Armpit lice.
Armpit lice.
Yeah.
And there's an outbreak.
So there's a I don't know what the word is, a pandemic, epidemic, endemic. But basically, a recent rumor has been circulating online that there's been an outbreak of pubic lice at the Brigham Young University in Utah. Now, if Utah hasn't given you a clue as to what I'm talking about the Mormons. So however, the claim is not about public lice in the typical sense, but rather armpit lice within many of the undergrads. The suggestion is that some of the students have been practicing a form of intercourse known as bagpiping, where one partner would pump their genitals into the armpits of another as a way to maintain their commitment to chastity while still experiencing pleasure.
What? I was going to say, how is this being passed around? So armpit sex?
I guess so, yeah.
Wasn't it Family Guy sketch?
Yeah, wasn't it like where they were trying to practice chastity, so they were just having sex
in the ear?
In the ear. And the saying was, you know what they say, once you go black, you go deaf. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that's been plaguing our modern society in today's age, especially within the Mormon community.
Wow, lube sales must have gone up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's the only thing I have for today, really. Hopefully I'll have something else to kind of entertain you with next week. But in terms of our news beat or news round, that's what I've got for today.
Okay.
So in today's episode, well, I'll be telling you the story about the mysterious murder of JonBenét Ramsey. Tell me, Adam, what do you know about JonBenét's death? Have you ever heard of her?
I've heard of her, but you're going to have to refresh my mind.
Okay, well, let's dive into today's topic. So, on December the 26th, 1996, JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty pageant queen, was found dead in the basement of her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. This discovery and the subsequent investigation into how she died sent shockwaves throughout the world. Despite numerous investigations and theories that have been put forward by investigators, this case still remains unsolved today. So in today's episode, I'll be taking you through the journey of the events that occurred that night. We will together examine the evidence with a view of you and me coming to our own conclusions as to what we think happened on the day of JonBenét's murder.
We might even solve it.
We might even solve it. So one thing I just want to mention, though, it is very important to note that from the very beginning of this investigation into JonBenét's murder, it has been filled with issues. This includes the way that the Ramseys' wealth and influence have managed to derail the investigation and how conflicting expert witness testimonies, evidence, and various theories have ended up muddying the case, so much so that the case still remains unsolved today. But it is really fascinating. But one thing I just want to make sure before we dive into this is that keep in mind that all the information and the opinions that are going to be shared in this episode are all our own opinions, and everything we say is said in allegedly?
Allegedly. So no.
Is alleged.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I don't want to be sued, 2 episodes in, Jesus, can you imagine? So, first of all, I think a great place for us to start is with the Ramsey family themselves. So let's meet them. Okay, so the Ramsey family were one of America's most well-known and wealthy families, consisting of JonBenét Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, and their 2 children, Burke, and, of course, the late JonBenét. Now, John Ramsey was, or is still, because he's still alive, the patriarch of the family and was born in 1943 in Michigan, where he studied engineering and business. He went on to start his career in the computer industry, eventually rising to the high-level executive position at Access Graphics, which later becomes a subsidiary of the aerospace and defense company known as Lockheed Martin. So this organization is a serious deal. They supply weapons and military equipment to the government, essentially. So it's a pretty serious company. In 1996, the company manages to get itself valued at $1 billion, earning John the recognition as Entrepreneur of the Year from the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. John's first marriage is to a woman called Lucinda Pash, who he has 3 children with. After this marriage ends in divorce, John marries Patsy in 1980, and they have 2 children together. Burke and JonBenét are their names, and unfortunately, John's eldest daughter, Beth, does pass away in a car accident in Chicago in 1992. Now, Patsy is raised in a middle-class family in West Virginia, and she is known for her beauty and outgoing personality. She marries her high school sweetheart, but the marriage ends in divorce soon after, and Patsy meets John while she is working as a flight attendant in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, throughout most of Patsy's life, she is heavily involved in the beauty pageant kind of industry, which is a big and normal part of the culture for many young girls growing up in that region at the time. So much so that in 1977, Patsy wins Miss Atlanta at the age of 20. Mm-hmm. So she's pretty pretty. She's gorgeous. The couple live in Atlanta for a few years before then moving to Boulder, Colorado, where they continue to raise their children, Burke and JonBenét. So now Burke Ramsey is 9 years old at the time of JonBenét's death, making him 3 years older than his sister, around about the time of her death. Now, Burke is considered shy, but he's also very smart, and JonBenét is extremely talented and a beautiful, outgoing little girl who's heavily involved in the beauty pageant industry. Her mother, Patsy, is heavily invested in her daughter's success, and JonBenét is just stunning, and she quickly rises to prominence, winning a huge number of different pageant titles. So I'm going to show you a picture of JonBenét, and I just want you to just describe for us what you see on the screen.
So yeah, a little blonde girl, big hair, very sort of late 80s, early 90s kind of style, white dress, made up, flowers in her hair. So, I mean, essentially she looks a lot older, or made to look older than she actually is. She's made to look like an adult almost.
So what do you think of child beauty pageants anyway?
I'm going to be honest, they're pretty weird. I find the whole situation of trying these innocent, girls that should just be like playing, made to sort of parade around on stage in makeup and act, older than they should be, really.
For sure. I mean, the biggest problem that I've got with it is the sexualization of it all. To me, it's just not right. Seeing kids decked out in heavy makeup and provocative clothing is just, I think, it's not appropriate. I know plenty of adults who struggle with this as it is anyway. So there's a huge amount of pressure that gets put on these. I can only imagine there's a huge amount of pressure that gets put on these children at this age, which only is going to just end up fueling this kind of concept of these unrealistic kind of beauty standards as they get older.
Well, just think of the learnt behaviour that they're getting now from their parents or whoever's influencing them to do this, and how they're going to carry that on, and then, onto their children potentially. Sure. So I just feel like that's pretty problematic.
Sure, for sure. And I mean, and remember, there's only one winner with these pageants anyway. So these mums are proper pushing their kids to really succeed. And when they don't, because there can only be one winner, they're obviously it's going to have some kind of impact.
I mean, I'm sure they do find it fun to some degree. I mean, young girls, boys like dressing up and whatever. But when you're put into this kind of competition situation, and like you say, these provocative, and what else could be around the corner, like in terms of predators and stuff like that, giving them access.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest thing there, is that it's a prime opportunity for people who are looking to exploit children. They would easily be attracted to this kind of industry because it gives them access to those children. For
sure.
And the thing is, like, when will people realize that Tom Tucker was correct and that the number one cause of paedophilia is essentially sexy children? And
another Family Guy reference there.
But yeah, so that's JonBenét. And that's our little rant about beauty pageants. So should we get into the story?
Yes, let's do it.
So there are several events that do take place in the lead up to the day of JonBenét's murder, which many investigators think may be of some significance to the case. But I'm just going to quickly summarize some of those events, or the ones that I particularly think stand out the most. So basically on the 20th of December, 1996, Access Graphics, that's the business that John Ramsey kind of works at and owns, has a massive luncheon for around about 300 people where they celebrate the 1 billion mark worth of sales. Employees, and they do this at the Hotel Bolorado. And on the same day, the Daily Camera publishes an article on Access Graphics and their success at reaching $1 billion in sales. On the 22nd of December, JonBenét Ramsey appears in a beauty pageant at the Southwest Plaza Mall. And the 23rd of December, the Ramseys host a Christmas party with approximately 30 guests. Now, on the 23rd of December, at this party around about 6:47 p.m., someone attending the party places a 911 call but hangs up without saying anything. The police call back, but the Ramseys... but they get through to the Ramsey's answering machine. So an officer is dispatched to check it out, but he leaves being assured that there is no emergency at all. On the 24th of December, an article appears in the Boulder Daily Camera regarding the Ramsey's Christmas party on that day. By the way, Adam, these people are super fancy.
I was going to say, it sounds it.
They are. So, I mean, his company has just hit $1 billion. Patsy Ramsey is a socialite. She's got high influence in the area. These are the type of people that send out holiday photographs of them, their kids, all in matching jumpers. This is the epitome of what their life is like. So they're high privilege, high wealth. Now, on the 24th of December at 9 p.m., John Ramsey retrieves a brand new silver girl's bike that he's been storing at his neighbor's garage, and he places it under the tree for JonBenét for Christmas Day. We now get to Christmas Day itself in 1996. So around about 6 a.m., the Ramseys wake up. John, at around about 12 p.m., goes and checks on his plane because they are arranging to go on holiday the very next day to one of their properties in Charlevoix. Between 2 and 3 p.m., John returns home from checking the plane, and at about between 5 and 6, the Ramseys leave for the evening to attend a Christmas party at their friends Fleet and Priscilla White's. How posh is that name?
Fleet and Priscilla White.
Fleet, yeah, Fleet. Hey, Fleet! So nothing is out of ordinary, according to people at the party. The Ramseys seem to be in good spirits and they all seem to be happy. At some point during the evening, the Ramseys leave the party. JonBenét and her brother fall asleep in the car, and the Ramseys on the way home drop off some gifts at their friend's house on the way home. At some point, the Ramseys arrive home. John puts JonBenét to bed, and John plays a game with Burke before he also goes off to bed. Around about 10 p.m. that evening, JonBenét is last seen alive. Between 10 p.m. and 10:30, Patsy goes to bed, and between 10:03 and 10:33, John then goes to bed. I'm being very exact with these times because this is from the exact timeline of events that took place in that evening.
So there's a 3-minute difference, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Whether or not it's significant, I don't think matters at this point. It's just the timeline that's happened. But things are now about to kick off, right? So midnight. A neighbor, Scott Gibbons, looks out his window and he notices that the Ramseys' upper kitchen lights were on. Was there an intruder in the house? Question mark. Around about 2 a.m., their neighbor, Melody Staton, hears a scream. And that's it for the evening. Approximately at 5:30 a.m., the Ramseys wake up. The family, as I said earlier on, had a plan to rise early that day because they were due to fly off to their property in Charlevoix, which was in Michigan, for their own family vacation. And now remember that because that's going to be important. At a roughly 5:33 a.m., Patsy wakes up. She dresses into the same clothes that she wore the night before. She puts on makeup and she goes to the second floor to rinse out JonBenét's jumpsuit that was down. And then she goes downstairs to the kitchen.
Rinse it out?
Yeah, so that's going to become clear in just a second. So I do find that odd. Rinsing out the jumpsuit is interesting because according to the FBI, an FBI profiler, JonBenét had a problem with wetting the bed. So I do wonder whether or not the previous night, that evening, she'd wet the bed and her mum would then maybe clean her up and then she...
left it on the side and deal with the morning.
Exactly. Or maybe it was just sitting, soaking in some water. I also find it strange that Patsy puts on the same clothes as the night before.
She's weird.
Yeah, exactly. So remember where she was the night before, right? So she was at a party, at their friends Priscilla and Fleet White. She's obviously dressed up in a nice evening wear, but now she's waking up and they're getting ready to go on holiday. Is she wearing evening clothes to go on holiday? I don't know. You would surely, if you
they don't specify just what clothes she's wearing the night before.
Yeah, she just puts on the night. Yeah, I assume someone of her caliber and her wealth and her privilege probably got really dressed up. And it's Christmas as well, right? You get dressed up at Christmas. She wasn't exactly wearing a tracksuit the previous night.
True, but I still find it odd that you'd put on the same clothes.
Exactly. It's going to become very clear later on. So at 5:45 a.m., Patsy heads downstairs and she discovers a handwritten note on 3 sheets of paper near the spiral staircase towards the ground floor, which indicates that JonBenét has been kidnapped. At around about the same time, Patsy reads only the first few lines of the note that states that JonBenét was kidnapped. She was safe, she was unharmed, and the note demands $118,000 for her return. Patsy immediately screams and proceeds to check JonBenét's room, which is obviously empty. At 5:45 a.m., John hears Patsy scream. He runs to try and find her. He sees her in the stairwell, and together they check Burke's room, who appears to be asleep in his room. Now, remember that detail, because that's going to be really important later on. He's asleep in his room. Before 5:52 a.m., John darts downstairs to read the ransom note, and Patsy calls 911.
Okay.
We are now going to listen to that call.
Okay.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on?
15th Street.
What's going on there, ma'am?
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Explain explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old.
How long ago was it?
I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's
Does it say who took her?
What?
Does it say who took her?
I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
It's a ransom note?
It says SBTC. Victory. Please.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Patsy Ramsey. I'm the mother. Oh, my God. Please.
I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been
No,
gone?
I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh, my God, please.
Okay,
Please, there's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath,
Please,
okay?
hurry.
Patsy.
So,
Okay.
do you have any comments on that whatsoever?
I mean,
Not a trick question, by the way. You can say that was absolutely fine, because to me, when I listened to it, it was just completely plausible. She sounds distraught. Hey, it's Kyle here. I've got a quick favour to ask you. If you enjoy listening to the Compendium podcast, there is one simple way that you can help show your support. Just hit that follow button in the app that you're listening to us through right now. This year, we're putting everything into making the Compendium better for you. And the only thing we'll ever ask you to do is to hit that follow button or leave us a review. It really helps our show more than we can probably articulate, and is the one thing that you can do to help us spend even more time with you guys. We really appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the show.
yeah, it sounded like, it sounded, I guess, natural enough. I feel like there's more to this, but obviously, I'm assuming that she could be a suspect, but she's not coherent. She's panicking, which all sort of makes sense when you're in that situation. You might not be properly listening. But whether she's a bit over the top, I don't know. It's hard to...
I think I agree with you there. I think she, in hindsight, she might seem over the top, but I think if you just woken up and your daughter's gone, I think that was quite a plausible reaction to have had. I didn't find anything odd about the call, but it's not the call that I've got a problem with. You ready for this?
Okay.
So, according to the Boulder Police Department, Patsy hangs up the phone thinking that the call was over, but the operator could still hear what was going on in the background. The tape is then sent to an aerospace corporation for analysis. In 2003, the National Enquirer claims to have obtained a leak version of the audio, as well as a transcript, which confirmed to be accurate by a source familiar with the investigation.
Okay.
The transcript shows that after Patsy thought she hung up the phone, she could be heard saying the following: "Help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus." And then a voice believed to be John Ramsey speaking to Burke can be heard in the background saying, "We're not talking to you." And then in the distance, a voice believed to be Burke can be heard saying, "What did you find?" So the operator reported that the tone of the conversation changed dramatically from the moment that Patsy thought she hangs up the phone. She's no longer hysterically babbling, as she was in the 911 call. She then appears to be speaking coherently, while John speaks clearly and deliberately. Burke does not seem to be scared or worried, which leads the operator to believe that the conversation was completely rehearsed. And in conclusion, while the 911 call does not prove who committed the murder of JonBenét, it does raise questions about the Ramseys' accounts of the events for that evening. Because according to the timeline, as I mentioned earlier on, they claim that Burke was asleep the entire time. But the tone and conversation within this 911 call seems to suggest otherwise. Exactly.
So he was awake when she made the call. What was it, 5:45 or 10:45, 5:06? That's chilling.
It is. Things just don't make sense, do they? But obviously, this entire all these events and also the 911 call was triggered by the discovery of this ransom note, which was left on the stairs within the Ramsey's family home.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to get you to read the note.
Okay.
Are you going to read it like a kidnapper?
No.
Okay, right, let's go.
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent small foreign faction. We do, which is crossed out, respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed. And if you want to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate sized attaché to the bank. When you get home, you'll put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You'll also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You'll be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement, countermeasures, and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory. SBTC. This feels like something out of a cheesy action movie.
That's what I said.
This feels so over the top. He's been watching Die Hard and whatever.
That's what I said as well. How funny. Well, I mean, let me start by saying that the moment that the police see this ransom note, they should have disregarded it immediately and secure the house down, which they do not, which causes a massive issue for this case. I believe straight off the bat that the Ramseys killed JonBenét, and I believe that this ransom note was written to just mislead and misdirect the entire investigation from start to finish. Because exactly like you said, it feels like it's something that's written out of a horror movie, like an action movie, like Die Hard, or in fact, and we'll come on to this in a second.
Do we know if it was typed or written?
So this was a handwritten note. It was written across 3 sheets of paper. So it's 2.5 pages long, and it was written in essentially what is a Sharpie. But that's actually going to bring us, I'm going to go through some of my thoughts about this note, and I'll also fill in some of the findings from the investigation. And then at the end of it, we can kind of just decide on the legitimacy of this note by the end of it. So first of all, the pen and the pad came from the house. It was Patsy's pad that was situated in the back hallway, and the felt tip pen that was used came from an orange container inside the kitchen and was placed back there when it was done.
Well, that is sus straight away.
For sure.
When I kidnap people, I do not spend my time writing a 2-page letter.
In the house as well. It's crazy. The thing is, though, and in terms of the writing the letter in the house, there were practice notes as well that were found. One of the practice notes addressed the note to Mr. and Mrs., with the final draft just being Mr. Ramsey. So whoever kidnapped JonBenét Ramsey had time to sit down and practice their note, which I think is just bizarre. And also, why would you rely on the family having the equipment? What if they didn't have pen and paper? Like, why would you go and kidnap the daughter for the ransom, but then not guarantee that you had something to write it on? What if they didn't?
This is bizarre.
What if they were a paperless household, like your office?
What about the 90s?
It's crazy.
Did they have DNA sort of testing at this stage?
There was, but it was new. But there is some DNA. We can go through that evidence in a moment. But also, one thing I want to mention as well, that this here is the longest ransom note in US criminal history.
I know. I almost got bored reading it.
I mean, it's a doozy. How many words do you reckon is in that?
It's like 400, 500?
373 words. The average ransom note is only 13 words. So that gives you an indication just how elaborate this is.
Yeah.
And if you were going to be, and even like the most simple ransom notes, I'm sure were prepared before they arrive. In a CBS documentary, they try to work out how long it's going to take to write this note out manually, and it takes them 21 minutes to recreate the note by hand. And just remember, that is from them scribing it, copying it. Remember, if you are writing this in the original note, it's going to take way longer because you've got to think about what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Plus, you've got your practice notes going on.
Exactly. Of course, this note is a massive ramble. It includes so much information that doesn't really seem necessary for a ransom note. If I was going to write the note, the entire note could have been written as such. We have the girl withdraw 118,000 in unmarked non-sequential bills from the bank. Do not alert authorities or the girl dies. We will contact you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to tell you how to deliver the money to us. That's it. That's all you need to say, right? Everything else is just meaningless.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it kind of just makes me think that like you say, the Ramseys are sort of in on this because they're panicking. Something's happened. They're thinking this is going to be great. This is the way to kind of like divert attention away from them, and probably just not thinking straight.
Probably, yeah. First of all, you said it earlier on anyway, which is just blowing my mind. The note feels familiar. They've definitely been watching way too many action movies. Couple things. Don't grow a brain, John. That line is directly from Speed 1994. That's
Really?
where they say it in that. So not the word John, but it says don't grow a brain, which to me, it impresses me that a foreign faction is so caught up on American culture. So...
Well, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't a kidnapper watch a great action movie?
Well, that's how do you think they get all their ideas? I also have a problem with the word small foreign faction. Why would a kidnapper diminish their own faction by describing themselves as small? Because if you wanted to intimidate, you wouldn't describe yourself as small, you'd describe yourself as large. And if you were a moral kidnapper who had a problem with telling lies, then just don't reference size at all.
Yeah, I mean, they also make a reference size of the bag that they want to put the money in.
The attaché. Like, what kind of foreigner uses the word attaché?
Yeah, and adequate sized. Make sure that you can put it all in. It's dumb.
The language is way too sophisticated, in my opinion, for someone who is a foreigner or from a foreign terrorist organization. It is. Do you get the sense that this is political in nature with the line? Because, of course, it says, we know that Axis Graphics is a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin, which supplies weapons and all sorts of things to the government. So it says we do respect, and they crossed out the word do. I guess they were going to say don't. So we respect your business, but not the country that it serves. That, to me, straight away says that it's political in nature, which I'm going to come on to a second. But before we do that, I want to touch upon the first line where it says, we are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. They call, like, foreigners, for a start, don't call themselves foreigners. They say, we are Irish, we are Muslims, we are Australian, we are the Scottish. We don't go, we are foreigners. It's Americans who call foreigners foreigners.
Yeah, anyone that's not from there or whatever country,
This is too sus. I also have a big issue with the amount, 118,000. Why not 100,000? Why not 1 million? The ransom amount also just so happens to be the exact amount that John receives as a bonus that year, which could indicate that someone who knows him is in fact the likely kidnapper, if there is a kidnapper, which I don't believe there is. And I think that's our first clue that they're trying to divert attention away from them to maybe someone else that potentially knows them, that's been watching them.
Right. I would say smart, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah. But also, John's company just hits $1 billion in sales. So why not ask for 100 million?
Yeah, if you notice, they're making out that they obviously know enough about him and his family.
Yeah.
So they would have done some research on the business, right?
Sure. And what is a foreign faction, a terrorist organization, going to do with $118,000? Like, they want more. Surely they want more.
It's like pocket money, surely.
Must be. What I don't understand is why, if this was politically motivated, why not kidnap a politician? Because if this is politically motivated, surely kidnapping a politician's daughter would potentially give you more sway in you being able to get your way. Because what are the government going to say? You've just kidnapped someone that works for us or supplies us with goods. Like, but if they kidnapped, let's say, the vice president's daughter, then you probably have a bit more sway, especially if it's political. But even though they say it's political, there's no mention of any politics in there. They say they are a small foreign faction, and we respect your business, but not the country that it serves. But they don't mention what it is that they want or what it is that they stand for. And why be so vague as well? If you were a terrorist organization of some sort, why not say exactly who you are? You want to lay claim to that, right? Because terrorism is all about activism, if you will, or like, do you understand what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The Taliban want to claim if there's a terrorist attack like that was us. We're taking ownership of that. It was us. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think
just
so.
Doesn't really add up. I have a problem with the phrasing hence as well, and hence, where there is, to me, extremely uncommon use of the word therefore, because that's what that is referring to. So looking at where else that word has been used could potentially uncover a clue. And I don't think we need to look very far in terms of the Ramsey family to see where else that's been used. Okay. So the Ramsey family used the phraseology on a website where they write the following statement. Had there been no birth of Christ, there would be no hope for eternal life, and hence no hope for being with our loved ones again. So that was in relation to, I believe, JonBenét Ramsey, which they said like the following year.
Right, okay.
So they have got a history of using those words as well. Also, the note mentions the word delivery, which is crossed out. To me, that indicates that the kidnapper didn't really have a clear plan about how they were going to release a hostage. First, they're thinking they would deliver her, and then they change their mind and say, no, you'll be picking her up.
Yeah, I didn't understand. It feels like the kidnappers are trying to be almost accommodating. If you're a bit early, then we might pick up your
we don't want to inconvenience you.
Yeah,
Mr. Ramsey.
It's what? And these are supposed to be like an evil organization, right? And they're using words like hence and all this. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But my favorite part, I think, is if they catch him talking to a stray dog.
She dies.
I mean,
you shouldn't laugh.
No, but just in terms of the absurdity of the.
So the kidnapper was in the Ramsey home between midnight and 5 a.m. when John and Patsy were sleeping, allegedly. So it is assumed that the kidnapper would expect the note to be discovered the next morning, right? But they use the words very explicitly in the note that the delivery will be overwhelming, so I advise you to be well rested. So when written in this way, it feels like the note should have been left with the intention of being discovered the previous early evening so that John could get a good night's rest.
Maybe he's thinking that he needed to sleep after writing this note.
Can you imagine how that call goes? So, for example, like, hi, John, I hope you're well rested. Yes, I am, thanks. Yesterday was Christmas and it was a very long and arduous day. I could have maybe done with another hour in bed. You woke me up, actually. Who is this? It's me, the kidnapper. Who? The kidnapper. Didn't you get my note? What note? I just said I woke up. He said, but you're well rested, right, John? Who is this? Never mind, I'll call you at 11. So what was he thinking? The kidnapper also says that if we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter. Now, the kidnapper surely knows that the note will be found at the earliest, 6 a.m. And also, banks won't even be open on like the day after Christmas, right? I know that this was midweek, so if you're right in what you were saying that Boxing Day isn't a holiday and that the banks would be open, then fine, I can get that. But I just don't buy that banks would be open and therefore would even be able to get the money before 10 a.m. the day after Christmas And if the banks were open, they were only open in less than an hour.
Yeah.
And he might not be home to get the call between 8 a.m. because he's at the bank waiting for it to open. So he's got to get the money at 9 a.m., quickly get 118,000, then quickly get home with maybe 15 minutes to spare just to get there in time for the phone call.
I think it just adds to the confusion, and this whole letter seems like a bit of a muddle.
It's bullshit, basically. Handwriting analysis shows that John Ramsey did not write this ransom note. However, Patsy could not be completely eliminated as the writer. Analysis was made difficult because it was written with a felted pen. So that did make it a bit more difficult, but there's one thing for certain is that Patsy was the only person that they couldn't 100% eliminate as being the writer.
Interesting.
So let's continue with our timeline, shall we?
Okay.
At 5:52 a.m., the Ramsey family contact their friends Fleet and Priscilla White and John and Barbara Fernie. 5 minutes later, Officer French arrives at the Ramsey's house. Patsy greets him on arrival, and John Ramsey shows them around the house, pointing out the ransom note that was left on the floor near the kitchen. From 6 to 7 a.m. in the morning, friends of the Ramsey family and a number of officers and victim advocates arrive at the house. Now, despite not following normal protocol, the police do not seal off the house. Some people in the house conduct their own searches, so they're walking around the house. That includes them searching the basement and the cellar where JonBenét's body is currently situated. Spoiler alert. I probably shouldn't have said it that way, should I?
No.
But yeah,
what?
She's down there.
Hang on. So, is there any sort of signs of like a break-in or anything like this?
Well, we're going to get to that. Okay. Yes, that causes that's a big bone of contention for this investigation as well. And there seems to be two camps where people typically fall in terms of their theories of what they think happened. Okay. One is the intruder theory, and the other one is the Ramseys did it.
Okay.
Some people are in the house. They do conduct searches, as I said, including the basement and the cellar where JonBenét Ramsey's body is situated. But the thing is, though, when people search the cellar, it's too dark for them to see anything. So they don't bother going in because the light switch is on the other end. So no one ever finds her body. It is noted that there is a window in the basement playroom, which is broken, and there's a suitcase underneath it with broken pieces of glass. There are conflicting accounts of whether or not the window was open or closed that day. So between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., more officers and family arrive at the Ramsey house. At this time, John Ramsey conducts a search of the basement area on his own. According to his testimony, he found the broken window open partially and under it the same suitcase seen earlier by the Fleet family. Mr. Ramsey, or John, states that the suitcase belonged to his family and was normally kept elsewhere in the house. At 7:13 a.m., Burke is taken to the home of Fleet and Priscilla White's house. And at 7:30 a.m., John Ramsey gathers the £118,000 requested in the ransom note. So he had the money. Okay. Remember, I don't know, did I mention earlier on that the money itself, the amount, £118,000, was the exact amount that John got as a bonus.
Which, so that either thinks that's either money he's able to easily get, or he's thinking, someone might know that I got this bonus, and therefore maybe that's the
potentially, yeah, or that kind of that intention to mislead and misdirect. Between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., there's a number of activities taking place in the house. Now, despite the fact that the investigation was being treated as a kidnapping and not a murder, officers and family members and friends are coming and going. They're walking through the house, so much so that one of the victim advocates is helping Patsy be calm and providing food and snacks and refreshments, and she cleans down some of the surfaces in the kitchen with essentially clean detergent, potentially wiping away really crucial evidence, which is going to be coming in just a few minutes. So, yeah, completely botched from the very start. So now around 10 a.m., the deadline for the suspected kidnappers to call passes without anyone noticing. Now, your daughter's just been kidnapped, and it says very clearly in the ransom note that we will call you between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. and 10 a.m. comes and goes and you don't even notice at all. It would be 8:30. I'd be like, have they called yet? Have they called yet? Have they called yet?
Yeah, and also, I mean, of course, but they, you can understand why they would call the police in this situation. But they did say, we're watching you. And so they've got police, family, all these people at the house.
Well, I mean, with that logic, then JonBenét is definitely dead.
Because,
that's the first thing they did was call the police. They went against what the note asked them to do.
So surely if you read this, it says, I'm not supposed to call you. You're not supposed to be here. How do I need to do this?
That's it.
So,
it's so suspicious.
Yeah.
Of course, it comes and goes. This should have obviously been an alarm for John and Patsy, who obviously would be worrying about the situation, but they don't say a single thing. And around about 10:30 a.m., the family finally take action to preserve any evidence left by JonBenét's kidnapper by sealing off her bedroom with crime scene tape. However, they don't seal off the rest of the house. Now, at 12:30 p.m., Detective Aunt spots that John Ramsey is alone, and she decides to instruct him to go ahead and search the house again, just because he looks a bit anxious and he looks a bit like beside himself. So she's like, it'll keep him occupied. So John anxiously paces around the living room while Patsy remains still in her chair. At 1 p.m., John leads his friend Fleet White to the basement where they first inspect the train room. They had the broken window in there, and John mentions that he broke it a few months prior because he often loses his keys and he'd often have to kind of break into the house in order to get in. So they then check the broom closet before moving to the wine cellar. Upon entering the room, John discovers JonBenét's body and cries out immediately, "Oh my God, my baby." He turns on the light and then removes the duct tape from her mouth. Just after 1:05 p.m., Fleet White runs upstairs and calls for an ambulance. John carries JonBenét's body upstairs and sets her down on the floor, but Detective Ardent picks her up and moves her near the Christmas tree. John Ramsey kneels beside her, repeating, "My little angel, my little angel." Friends bring Patsy over to the body, and according to the police, she throws herself over JonBenét's body. Now, the detective then requests backup and declares code black, which is police lingo for murder. And by 1:30 p.m., the police decide to secure the entire house.
So at this point, like the whole crime scene's been contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I imagine this is going to basically make it very difficult to prove one way or another who's involved.
Exactly. Didn't. A complete bundle from the start. I mean, they should have known that there was something fishy the moment they saw the ransom note, because even to us who have nothing to do, aren't police officers, can clearly see that there's something fishy about this.
And so they hadn't, and so when they found the body, it was in the house, in the cellar.
Yeah, we're going to go through the crime scene in just a moment. I just want to tell you a bit more about a couple other events that happened, and then we'll go through the crime scene.
Okay.
So at 1:40 p.m., 20 minutes after the body was moved, John makes a phone call to his pilot and asks him to prepare for a flight to Atlanta. The police advise him, do not leave town, so they decide to stay with their friends, the Fernies in Boulder. This raises, obviously, a massive red flag, because what was the purpose of him readying the plane? If it wasn't to get away. Remember, he was due to be going to Charlevoix that day on a family holiday. So why did he all of a sudden need to go to Atlanta? There's some rumors that he had a business meeting that he couldn't get out of, but surely...
Why would you want to go to that?
Exactly. And also he had other plans anyway scheduled in the diary. So I just don't understand that. It sounds too fishy to me. At 1:45, the Ramseys leave for the Fernies, and at the same time, the FBI agents arrive at the Ramseys' residence. At around about 2:30 p.m., Burke is interviewed by the Boulder Police Department, and it is claimed that he slept throughout the entire event the previous night. However, later, as we know, the enhanced 911 call reveals that that was a complete lie. The time is unspecified, but John Ramsey hires an attorney, and on the 27th of December, at 8:15, the autopsy of JonBenét is conducted by John Mayer and the Boulder County coroner. The detective Linda Arndt is there, as well as with a guy called Tom, who were present during the autopsy. Now, this is where we're going to have a quick review of the crime scene and review the results of the autopsy to see whether or not we can piece some of these things together.
Okay.
Right. Any thoughts before we do that?
No, take it away.
Right. The crime scene. So John JonBenét Ramsey's body was found in the wine cellar of the Ramseys' home. Reports indicate that the light switch was on the other side of the room, which may explain why JonBenét's body wasn't discovered during previous searches. However, the person who was with John Ramsey at the time of the discovery claimed that John reportedly finds her body before the lights are turned on. So he exclaims, my baby, and then the lights turn on, and then he addresses the body, where no one else could even see in that room. The autopsy shows that JonBenét died by asphyxiation by strangulation and a craniocerebral trauma. This was achieved using a garrote around her neck that was tightened using a cord and a paintbrush belonging to Patsy Ramsey. The head injury, which she sustained, was really severe. It was determined to have happened before the strangulation and resulted in an 8-inch skull fracture. It was later identified that the likely cause was a heavy flashlight which was seen sitting on the kitchen counter. There was evidence of a sexual assault before her death. Wooden shards from the paintbrush used to tighten the garrote around her neck were found inside her vagina, and there was evidence that her hymen was broken and she had a slight trauma to her vagina. There was also evidence that the vagina had been wiped down because they found fibers not belonging to her underwear. There was no sign of forced entry into the home, no footprints in the snow around the house. The basement window was broken, but John Ramsey told investigators that he had broken it himself months prior when he locked himself out of the house. There was a large cobweb over the broken window, and if there was an intruder, this would have been disturbed, further disproving the intruder theory altogether, in my opinion. A former FBI agent stated that the crime scene appeared to have been staged to look like a kidnapping gone wrong. JonBenét's hands were tied up above her head with loose nylon parachute cord, purchased by Patsy a few months prior. She was not wearing the same clothes that she was supposed to have gone to bed in, and the red turtleneck pajama top was found in the bathroom sink, and she had a small white blanket covering her torso when they found her body. A neighbor reportedly heard a loud scream after midnight, but the Ramseys claimed that they heard nothing. Notably, there was a bowl of milk and pineapple with a spoon on the kitchen table. By the way, that was really those are awful things I just said. But the really bizarre thing there is pineapple and a bowl of milk with a spoon. That's what whoever was. So JonBenét's last meal was proven to be pineapple and milk. Who is that a thing? Is that a thing in America where people eat pineapple and milk?
I don't know. Maybe like a breakfast. I don't know.
It's just weird.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre. So the autopsy later reveals that this was one of the last things that JonBenét ate. Male DNA was found under JonBenét's right hand fingernail and in her underwear, but it did not match any of the Ramseys. Later on, they would establish that this DNA came from the factory where the underwear was manufactured in Vietnam. So it was then completely discounted because for a long time, this DNA propped up this idea that it was an intruder that had broken in and had killed her. But they found that the DNA also matched other packets that they had found and they'd opened fresh and they'd done a check.
So that probably delayed them finding out or progressed. Because, that would have kind of caught a red flag, basically, on the case.
For sure. A former police chief, theorized that JonBenét was hit on the head with an unknown object, possibly a flashlight, and was strangled 45 minutes to 2 hours later, which led to her death. So there's a final few things I just want to cover with the timeline, and then we can go into theories.
Okay.
So in 1997, a year passes before the Ramsey family hand over the clothing that they wore on that evening. Interviews with the family prove really difficult as they set unreasonable conditions for future questioning. Despite this, the detective attorney Alex Hunter defends the Ramsey family and supports the theory of an intruder. The police call for a grand jury assessment. The grand jury's results state that they should proceed with a criminal trial, but the DA, Alex Hunter, just goes, I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Why? Because he's really good friends with the Ramseys. Right, okay. And again, power, influence, money, wealth, they can all help you. Yeah, exactly. They can all help you get away with murder, essentially, allegedly. Later on, new DNA evidence is uncovered, which I said earlier on is determined that the DNA found inside her underwear came from a factory in Vietnam, which was just on the underwear. So that is pretty much completely dismissed.
Yeah.
But before that happens, the DA then completely exonerate the family of any wrongdoing. And that's it. That's the final word on it, which is just mental. Now, I have been searching the JonBenét Ramsey case for a while, and I have come across some intruder theories with a list of suspects. Now, while I think it's important to acknowledge that there is another side to the investigation, I personally don't believe any of the suspects were involved in this crime, even the ones that have confessed to it, because they're just trying to get clout or get notoriety.
People have actually confessed to this.
And they're all exactly as you'd expect. They're all really disgusting, long-headed, greasy pedophiles that have spent years in jail or are in jail, and they've got no prospects of coming out, so they want notoriety. But I don't believe any of it. There's very little evidence, in my opinion, that backs up that it was an intruder. So I've dismissed all that. Some suspects are, as I said, known pedophiles. So basically, the Ramseys did it. And here's my theory behind why and what happened that evening. Are you ready for it? Let me know if you agree or disagree.
I think I know where you're going with this.
So I believe that after the Ramseys got home the following evening from Priscilla and Fleet White's Christmas party, they took a sleepy JonBenét upstairs to her room. They changed her into pajamas and put her to bed. I think that John and Burke did indeed play downstairs, that little game that they said in the timeline. Soon after JonBenét went to bed, she wets the bed and wakes up. I think that Patty cleans JonBenét down, wipes down her body, including her vagina, puts a fresh pair of clothes on, hence why she wasn't, when they found her body, she wasn't wearing the clothes that she wore from the night that she went to bed in. She places the soiled jumpsuit in the sink, and while Patty changes her bedding, JonBenét waits downstairs with her brother Burke. I believe that Patsy had earlier served Burke a snack of pineapple and milk, which JonBenét sees on the table and sneakily takes a bite of. In a fit of rage, I think Burke picks up the flashlight, hits JonBenét over the head with it, bringing her close to death. This would account for the 8-inch skull fracture on her skull. I think Burke realizes what he's done. He goes and hides in his room. I think this explains why Burke was heard asking, "What did you find?" on the 911 call, and acting as if he didn't know anything. I believe that Patsy and John discover JonBenét's body around about midnight when she goes downstairs. I think it was quite close to midnight anyway. I don't think there was much time in between, which explains the scream that was heard by the neighbor. I think that both of them, immediately to them both, JonBenét immediately appears to either be brain dead, or she's either fitting, or she's having a seizure, or she just appears to be dead. In their panic, or as an act of mercy, or in an attempt, or in a combination of all those things, in an attempt to protect Burke from any possible repercussions, and I'll explain why in just a second, I think Patsy and John make the decision to kill JonBenét. They decide to make it look like it was a failed kidnapping in order to protect Burke. And I believe that John kills JonBenét using the garrote that he tightens around her neck using Patsy's paintbrush that was found in the basement. I believe that in an attempt to misdirect and make it look like a kidnapping, John imitates a sexual assault by inserting the paintbrush into her vagina, causing injury and breaking her hymen. I think Patsy and John then write the ransom note together while Patsy scribes a note. There is evidence of several drafts of the note being made, as we said earlier on. Patsy's handwriting is the only one that cannot be discounted, and I don't think any of them slept that night. And I think this is why Patsy claims to have dressed in the same clothes that she wore the night before. She just didn't go to bed. Right. At 5:45, there's a phone call to 911, which further explains why Patsy claims to have woken up in the same clothes. It also explains why 10 a.m. comes and goes, and they make no mention of the kidnappers not calling at all. And then further to this theory that Burke did it, he has a bit of a strange behavior track record, which I believe stems from a sibling rivalry or a lack of attention that he receives from Patsy, because all of her attention is on JonBenét with these beauty pageants. They go all over the country. They spend thousands of pounds kind of going through this process. And as a little boy, if at one point you did have your mother's attention and all of a sudden you don't, I guess it could raise some resentment.
Typical jealousy, but...
Potentially. And I mean, it's not always the case, but the following evidence suggests potentially otherwise. So it later becomes known that a couple of years prior to JonBenét's death, JonBenét undergoes some minor cosmetic surgery to fix a scar on her head, which was the result of Burke hitting her over the head with a golf club after he loses his temper with her. It is also known that Burke has a history of scatological problems. One instance from a statement given by the housekeeper said that she found excrement smeared on JonBenét's bedsheets. Linda Hoffman, who was part of the investigation, also says that they found feces smeared on a box of candy in JonBenét's room that she received for Christmas that year. There was also an instance where, during the investigation, police catalogue a child psychiatry book, which is bookmarked on a section around childhood sibling incest. So that's it. That's my theory. I think it was Burke who did it.
It sounds like it. Wow.
What do you think? Do you think that's plausible? Anything that doesn't really make sense?
I think what all the note being kind of like a hurried panic, trying to like perhaps create a story, also makes sense with the over the top sort of wording. And like we said, there's a lot of flaws in it. Their behavior, when you said about her being dressed in those clothes and the scream and the night, then that all sort of makes sense.
That's it.
And of course, the videotape, not the recording that they're able to kind of get out that additional sound.
That's it.
After the call.
I mean, and that is, we'll include all these details and the ransom note in the show notes as well for you to be able to read. On the 911 call, there is the enhanced section of that call, which you can listen to, where you can make out Patsy Ramsey saying, oh Jesus, help me. And then you can hear little Burke saying, what did you find? It is really difficult to hear, but it's definitely on the tape and it's been verified by various people that were close to the investigation. But yeah, I think it's such a shame that this has still not been solved after all these years because of the behavior or the non-compliance of the family. And I just think it's just so heartbreaking that such a beautiful little girl had to lose her life and not get a fair investigation into her death. Yeah.
How do you feel about the parents doing it? Because they've just lost a child and they're trying to protect the other child. Could you at least sympathize with what they were doing? But at the same point, they're misleading the whole family. And what kind of child or life has Burke had since?
Well, exactly. The thing is, though, like, kids do really crazy things. I don't think that Burke would have gone down for this, right? It was an accident. Unless they really thought that his past behavior and the things that he had done in the past were so significant that it could potentially be disastrous for him. They could be taken away or he could be held accountable for it. But, I mean, kids cause deaths accidentally, right? They didn't, I think, and it was just... They were in a panic. Yeah, they were just in a panic. I mean, Patsy, unfortunately, she passes away from ovarian cancer in 2000, and I believe 6. She has now passed away. Burke is still around. He's in his 30s now. He did do an interview with Dr. Phil, which you can watch, which the reception from that was just horrendous. Like, he told his account of the story, but people just didn't believe it. And that's when all of this resurfaced again, and even new fresh theories came out that it was definitely him who had done it. He was interviewed several times by the police and also even by the grand jury, I think, and a lot of the time in isolation of his parents as well. So I think that there was a very serious body of evidence to suggest that he did do it. But again, how much influence did John and Patsy have to kind of squash all that? Like, why did it not come of anything? It just makes me so angry.
Actually, I take my statement back about having sympathy. Actually, what they did to her afterwards, that's just...
With the sexual assault, that is horrendous, isn't it?
I just don't understand how you could do that. You might want to try and, I don't know, cover it up, but that's just a whole...
The reality is as well, like, they also proved that she was alive when the sexual assault happened. She might not have been of sound mind. She might have been out of it. She might be brain dead. But the fact is that she was still alive when that happened. And I just think that's an extreme thing to do. But then that's they were desperate. They wanted to protect Burke, I guess. John had already lost a daughter a few years prior in a car accident. Now he's just lost his other daughter. Maybe he didn't want to lose a third. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I guess can't imagine being under that sort of, that scenario, that pressure, I guess.
Great. Well, I guess that concludes our episode for today. So,
That's it. Thanks, Kyle.
See ya.